Okay. Good afternoon, Chief. Day late. Battery issue yesterday. As I said last week, I'm going to talk about my trips to East Berlin. We got to go to East Berlin as soldiers, but we had to wear our minimum of Class Bs depending on the weather. So Class Bs was, of course, your dress pants, your short sleeve shirt, but if you wore a long sleeve shirt, you had to wear a tie. We were told not to wear any awards or decorations. And with our service cap, catch 22 here, we were told since we were part of Field Station Berlin, we could not wear our DUI. DUI is Distinguished Unit Insignia, so that's the little medallion that you'll see there on the service cap from way back when. Officers wore their ranks, we wore as enlisted DUI. So we were told, don't wear your DUI because that distinguishes you at working at Field Station Berlin. But anybody else, regardless of they were a visitor from other places in Germany or the rest of the American station in Germany, to include the infantry soldiers and the artillery guys, and we had an armored unit there too. We actually had the largest tank company in the United States Army in Berlin. They could all wear their DUIs. So I'm like, okay, so if I'm East German, Soviet, soldier, spy, agent, whatever, and I see U.S. soldiers coming over to East Berlin without a DUI on their service cap, they must work at Field Station Berlin. I mean, it's not like we were told, shh, you can't reveal this information to anybody. It's not like it was classified that, Field Station Berlin personnel could not wear their DUI on their service cap. So, I mean, it was probably general knowledge over there. So I went to East Berlin. Now, when I was stationed in Berlin, the Deutsche Mark, the German Deutsche Mark, the D-Mark, highest was like 18 and change, and I think the lowest I ever saw was 15 and change. So therefore, $1 US was buying 18 D-Marks at that time, and as low as 15 and change. So good exchange rate. Didn't see that when I went over the second time. So we could take our Deutsche Marks, our D-Marks, exchange them for East German marks at 100 to 1. So you're already devaluating all the way down. Now, the funny thing is that once you exchange for East German marks, your leftover East German marks at 100 to 1, you cannot exchange back into Deutsche Marks. The West German government didn't want them. Now, it's paper, not even worth the paper. It's worth the paper it's printed on. Boy, I had a hard time saying that, didn't I? So the first time I went over, I think it was just with a bunch of groups of soldiers, kind of like a field trip, or wasn't a staff ride, but we went over. We were told not to purchase groceries because you'd be stealing from the East Germans, and they're having a hard enough time feeding themselves, supposedly. That's what we were told. So don't go over there to buy groceries, and if you see any store that has a long line, generally don't go by that one because, as everybody knows, the Soviet Union, you queuing up. In other words, you made a line to purchase whatever, and that generally meant that an item was probably brought in that day, and that's why everybody lined up, because of the rarity of that item. So don't stand in a line to purchase goods. Don't buy groceries, as I said, but enjoy yourselves. They did have a camera shop. I looked at cameras. I wasn't too impressed because they seem to have mostly Soviet brands. I did buy a pocket watch. I'll have to dig that out of the war chest maybe next week. I'm thinking about having a big show and tell next week of some of the stuff I've accumulated thus far in my career. And that was about it. But what was really funny is they had this huge plaza with no shops on it, hardly, but it was like a huge plaza. You could see from one end to the other, and what was really hilarious is down by the camera shop there was this nondescript civilian with a camera, and he was always like focusing on something. I mean, there was nothing to take a picture of in this plaza, but he would, oh, look at that, let me take a picture of that. And then when he'd see you, click, he'd take a picture of you. So somewhere there's a scrapbook, probably still in the East German government or their secret police, of, hey, here's a picture of specialist so-and-so, he must be at Field Station Berlin. So there's probably a photo album of all the people that served at Field Station Berlin somewhere in the archives. Who knows? So it wasn't a very good day. I mean, we couldn't do much due to all the restrictions. I think we only spent like a couple hours there, but going through the gate was kind of interesting because, you know, they hold up your ID, because we didn't require passports in the military back then. So our ID card was like a universal passport wherever we went. And so of course, you know, you hold up your OID and they'd check you and, you know, look you up and down and, you know, take their time. So going through the gate, either entering or exiting East Berlin was a long and tedious process. The second time I went over with a warrant officer and his family, and of course my spouse. And he had a real fancy sports van, I guess you could call it, because, you know, it was all decked out in the back. It had a nice seat. I was sitting in a seat twirling because it had a nice seat in the back, as I said, and it had the old screens and with the blinds, you know, like I got behind me where you could open them and all like that. Of course, I got a tap on the window, like open up your blind so I can check your ID against you. And I was acting a little cocky that day, which is probably not a good thing to do either, but we got through there. We went over because my missus wanted to buy some lead crystal for flowers and stuff like that, because they had inexpensive, you know, 101, yeah. But we also she wanted to get a diamond. Now the trick was, at the minute that you walked into the jewelry shop, and you of course have to wear your uniform because we couldn't go over in civilian attire, so as soon as they see that U.S. uniform, the price went way, way, way up. We tried sending the warrant officer's wife into the jewelry store by herself, but she didn't speak like a German. So, you're an American. Yes, Snickers is down below my feet, wanting to be in the video again. Who knows, maybe he'll come up here. So that didn't work out, so we didn't get any cheap diamonds. Of course, I don't remember how cheap they were, but still. But on our way back, the warrant officer got lost. Yes, Snickers. Okay, let me get the cat. Okay, into the lap. Yes, I'm talking to myself again. So, like I said, the warrant officer got lost on his way back. And we went down this street, and all of a sudden we saw East German soldiers, Soviet soldiers coming out of all the buildings. We really didn't get into a military complex, but I was surprised by the number of these Soviet and East German soldiers. And of course they were all coming out like pushing with their hands like stop, turn around, get the heck out of Dodge, whatever, or get the heck out of East Berlin, I guess I should say. But the warrant officer, there was a narrow street, so of course with his, I think it was a Dodge, could have been a Dodge van, so with his Dodge van, we had to go down to the end of the street. Well, at the end of the street was nothing but openness until you saw the wall that separated East Berlin and West Berlin at that time. And we got down to the edge of the end of the street, and he started to find a way to turn around. And of course, now we're surrounded by lots of soldiers. They're not asking us to get out. They just want us to, like I said, vacate East Berlin. So we got down, and I said, like, there was openness, and there was some construction going on off to the left. And I don't know where we were exactly, but I think that was the same time the Soviets were finally destroying Hitler's bunker, the one that was underground, because I knew it was on their side of the territory, if I remember correctly. Someone can probably point me on I'm wrong. So I think I saw Hitler's underground bunker. I really can't say for sure because, you know, every time I looked out the window, of course, I saw hands, like, get out of town, get out of East Berlin. So we finally spun around and we got back out of there. He found the proper street, got back over, and if anybody's, some of the movies, they talk about Checkpoint Charlie. That's what you went through in and out of East Berlin. Checkpoint Bravo was on the other side of Berlin. That's where you came in if you drove from West Germany through East Germany and entered Berlin via the highway. You went through Checkpoint Bravo. I think Checkpoint Alpha was on the border between East and West Germany, if I'm not mistaken. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, so we were at the Charlie one. At Checkpoint Charlie, they had a very interesting museum. Of course, it was all dedicated to the escape attempts and everything else, because they had like the car that a couple people, or a lady, I think she got stuffed into like the dashboard, and he got his girlfriend across, and it was a tiny car too. I don't remember the make and model. I'd love to go back to the museum and see if it's still there or not, see if people still remember their history. Of course, the wall was all painted. I never got a piece of the wall because we left Berlin the same day Lockerbie happened, and a year later that wall came down. And in my lifetime, that wall was not coming down, because I was there when President Reagan showed up. Didn't get to see the man, which kind of upset me because I had to work that day. All the female soldiers on my shift got selected to include my missus. They got to be receptionists and servers and stuff like that. My wife took her camera, but every picture she took of Reagan was out of focus. And when I asked her, I said, why are these all out of focus? Well, I was nervous. And I said, yeah, from a distance you were this nervous, so we didn't get a clear picture of President Reagan. So yes, I was in Berlin when President Reagan said, Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And of course, it wasn't coming down in my lifetime. A year later, I was surprised. As far as, I think the second trip was more around the Christmas time, if I remember. I can't really remember. And me and the missus went into a department store, or probably the only department store for all I know, and it was pathetic. I mean, we went to the toy department, and their toy selection was like 3 dolls, 2 or 3 bicycles, depending on the age group, per age group. I don't believe they had any little red wagons like we grew up with, like the Ryder wagon. But their toy select and games, I didn't really see any board games, like Monopoly or Life or Mousetrap. I didn't see anything like that. And it was like one floor, and wasn't very large floor for all these toys. And of course, all the little kids were pointing at what limited toys there were, asking their parents to get those. I really didn't see much oppression. Because second time when we went over to the warrant officer, we hit a couple like pastry shops. German pastries are good. East German pastries were just as good. The people were friendly. The people were nice. They didn't look oppressed or depressed. Because I remember in high school and junior high seeing all the movies on what the Soviet life was like, and everything was black and white and gray. If anybody remembers those movies, everything was black and white and gray. The people always just wore gray clothing, and that was about it. It was really hilarious seeing those movies and then going over there. They wore just as many colors as we did, at least in East Berlin. So that's it. Like I said, I'll do a show until next week. Hopefully I can find enough stuff. I still have not found my graduation photo from Gatsby. And I hope I find it. I already checked the war chest twice. I've checked a couple files, because it's not a very large photo, but still, I remember seeing it like about a year ago too, when I was cleaning house from top to stern, so to speak. So that's it. East Berlin, 101 Deutsche Mark, 18 to 1 US dollar. Yeah, so you can figure out. Yeah, we were playing with Monopoly money. That's what we actually called the East German money. And it was also made out of aluminum. Most of their coins was made out of aluminum. Real cheap metal for them over there. So this is Chief signing out. Remember, thank a vet, hug a vet if you can, do the elbow bump if you can't. Like I said, I feel proud. So thank a vet. See you next week. Chief out.